Here's to whiskey kisses, the peaty taste of sin. An Edinburgh morning with the smell of brewing on the wind. Here's to lighting bonfires as you watch the seasons turn.
Greetings, whiskey folk, and welcome back to Drinking Out Loud. I am your host, as ever, Adam Bradshaw, and today we are back on Zoom for another virtual interview. We have a very special guest coming to us all the way from Edinburgh, and I'm very jealous of the fact that you're in Edinburgh right now. I wish I was there. This is James Wills, the Sales and Marketing Director of none other than Kilchoman. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you very much. You should not be jealous. It's hosing down with rain, and it's about to get dark. So actually probably it's a bit colder probably where you are, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I feel like Victoria is pretty much exactly the same weather-wise as Edinburgh, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit warmer in the winter.
You should have moved somewhere with better weather.
So I think that weather is perfect for Edinburgh, though. I think it very much sort of matches its personality. In fact, one of my friends who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago was a folk musician at the pub that I worked at in Edinburgh. He wrote a song where he described Edinburgh as November Town, the town where it is just permanently November.
Yeah, I mean, it does pretty much everything is grey. I mean, it's pretty grey, but pretty much everything is grey.
That's why the architecture is so nice, to distract you from the weather.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So we have some fantastic whiskies here today, and this is something that I've been looking forward to doing for a little while now. I have to be honest, we were actually planning on releasing several of these whiskies on this video and ended up being like, I want to release them before Christmas, so to let people have an effort. So we saved one of them for release, but the other four are already available. But we're starting off today with something that is generally readily available. I've seen it on the shelves pretty much constantly for the last few years. Well, aside from some shipping mishaps during the last couple of years, I guess. And that is the Mackay Bay. Would you say that this, I mean, I know it's kind of a double-hander, but would you say that this is the default Kilchoman, or is this just... Yeah, definitely. I mean, like everyone in my position is always trying to dress up every single whiskey, and so none can be the standard kind of one. But this is we refer to it as our sort of flagship expression, which is dressing it up kind of thing. I think flagship's a great word for that.
Yeah, it's basically, embodies the house style of Kilchoman, I think, so when you're drinking Mackay Bay, you're drinking Kilchoman. And then a lot of the rest of the time it is taking that sort of Mackay Bay DNA and just going in another direction.
And I always try and shine a spotlight on the flagship models for all of the distilleries, because you can't fully appreciate and understand the limited editions and the special editions and all the crazy, $40,000 Bowmores unless you've had a Bowmore 12. And it's the same with Kilchoman. You can't appreciate fully, I don't think, the single cask Kilchomans without doing your homework first and figuring out what the house style is.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think I would even maybe struggle to pick up some of the other ones in a blind tasting, but I think Mackay Bay, with its fairly unique flavor profile within the Isla sort of umbrella, I'd be able to pick that out as Kilchoman most of the time. And because you're in Canada and I'm in Scotland, you can't test me on that. So I can.
Well, I've got a surprise for you. Look on your doorstep. No. Beautiful. Well, let's crack open this bottle, and I'll ask you a couple of questions about. Well, we should probably introduce what on earth Kilchoman is. So it's a younger Hang on, I just opened up the flap and it's asking me to scan a QR code. I feel like
I don't do that. You can do that if you want.
It's amazing.
That's why I'm here. You don't need to scan anything.
Well, I'm going to hang up on you and just show what happens when. No.
You can.
That's
so
cool.
It's like, it depends on which one you've got, but so you can either scan a QR code on the back, like everyone does now.
Yeah.
Or there's this other thing here, depending on the bottle you've got.
Oh yeah, no, we don't have that one.
Yeah. So this is previous to just the QR code one. You could I don't know if it's particularly interesting to show, but you can you used to be able to. Yeah. So that pops up, and then you can open up a tab, and it shows you what
an NFC chip in the label.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah,
crap!
yeah, in the label, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess in one very strange sense, COVID has saved you guys some money because everyone knows how a QR code works now, so you don't have to worry about the NFC chips.
Yeah, no, everyone the NFC chips did confuse people a bit, but yeah, well, they're easy.
That is absolutely amazing. I did not realize that existed. That is so cool. So yeah, Kilchoman, it's, as you said, on the wonderful island of Isla, which if you're the kind of person that's watching whiskey videos on YouTube and you've never heard of Isla before, you might want to go back and watch some other videos first. There's a little bit of pre-reading, I think, before this one. Yeah. But yeah, tell us the story. How did Kilchoman come to be?
So the distillery is relatively new, as you said. We started in 2005, and it was built by my family. My dad mainly, and then my mum got dragged in along the way. But yeah, he, as you can tell from my accent, probably, I am not a Scottish native. Neither is my father. I grew up down south, and we moved up to Scotland, and then my mother has links to the island of Isla. We sort of moved up in the mid-90s. My dad got into whiskey, and as an independent bottler at that stage, and then he kind of saw the boom in interest in single malt, and he couldn't get the casks that he wanted from Highland Park, Macallan, all the really established, well-known single malt brands. And so he thought, why not go and build his own distillery, as many people have done now. But back then it was a little bit more new, the concept of a new distillery. And he wanted to do it in a slightly different way. So, he took those links that he had with Isla, and he looked at the history of Isla, whiskey production, and saw that, Isla and actually most distilleries in Scotland, the heritage really comes from, originally the sort of illicit distillers. And then that turned into small scale farm distilleries with the Excise Act and stuff like that. So, these distilleries like Ardbeg or Bruichladdich or Lefroy, all these Isla distilleries in particular grew up from farm distilleries where they use locally grown barley. They used, peat cut from the immediate vicinity, matured everything on site, bottled everything. Well, not actually probably bottling everything on site, but a lot of the whiskey was matured on the island and then taken away for transport. So, but it was really about small scale production, craft production. And that was what my father wanted to create with Kilchoman. And so we are a farm, we grow our own barley for our range called 100% Isla. And that accounts for about 20% of our production. We grow, we malt, we distill, mature, bottle. And then as the distillery's kind of grown, that's been supplemented with barley that we buy in, or malted barley that we buy in from the Port Ellen maltings. But we're really about small scale, family run, craft production. And I'll explain my justification for craft, maybe a bit later. It's not complete bollocks.
Hey, if you're growing your own barley, I think you're allowed to use the word craft. And if any of that story sounds familiar to people in Victoria who are watching this show and potentially drinking along, welcome, of course, the viewers. Please join in the live chat. I will be there answering questions live in the text chat. So you can't ask us questions right now because this is pre-recorded. You can try, but you'll just be talking to a screen and that'd be a bit weird. But yeah, no, type away and check us out in the live chat. And if you have any questions, of course, for anyone at Gilcombe and especially James, leave a comment under the video as well, and I'm sure we'll be able to get those answered for you as well, depending on the questions. Some of them we might not want to answer. Be polite, be kind. But yeah, if that story is feeling particularly familiar to people here on Vancouver Island, it mirrors weirdly closely, actually, the story of our very own Shelter Point Distillery, which is also a farm distillery up north. So it's have you tried many single malts from Canada yet?
I don't think I have. I think it's probably because I haven't been traveling out, in Canada much in the last 3 years, really, because just before COVID, I had a I had a child. Well, I didn't personally, but my wife did, and so I didn't travel much then. And then so I haven't really been out, having people pour me stuff that I should taste for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, I am coming to Edinburgh in May, and I'll definitely be bringing some Canadian single malt with me. So if you manage to find me somewhere roaming around the Princess Street Gardens or something, I'll pull you around.
That's good.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm going to crack this bottle open. I'm very excited because it's been a long time since I've had any of this. Would you say that the consistency is pretty high on these bottlings?
Yeah, I mean, so Mackay Bay it works to a set recipe, if you like. We have a recipe of 90% bourbon barrel maturation for Mackay Bay, 10% sherry casks maturation. So we effectively have those two cask types at different ages, and we have that recipe, and we combine the two and reduce the strength to 46%, and the consistency is very good. I mean, the batches are only, the vattings are only done in, I think, 30 or 60 cask vattings, so relatively small number of barrels. But because because the bourbon barrels are only coming from one place, the sherry casks are only coming from one place, that lends a bit of consistency. But ultimately, there is always going to be a little bit of variance. But the recipe doesn't really change.
Do you have someone on site that samples the last batch and tries to match the current batch to the last one?
Yeah, so my father, Anthony, and Robin Bignell, who is our sort of production manager, between the two of them, they will ensure that there's consistency, and it's mainly about quality. If it's good and slightly different, we're not that fussed. But if it's slightly different and maybe not in a good way, then we'll try and navigate that. But it's actually quite hard, and it's very rare. But it's quite hard to get. If you don't kind of end up with what you think you were going to get, getting it to where you want it to be is quite hard to do. So actually, often, in some cases, we have just stuck it back in the barrels and thought, well, we'll do something else with that in a couple of years' time.
Yeah. Makes sense. I'm just going to pause for the pop for a second. Lovely. So, coming from a independent bottling background is something that I didn't know Kilchoman did, and that kind of explains the whole "we don't care if it's exactly the same, we just care if it's good" kind of emphasis, because that's a very indie bottler thing, right? And it's,
I mean, you can also say it to people like you, and you understand what is meant by it, rather than thinking that you just do whatever the hell you like.
Oh yeah. Within boundaries. Yeah. The fun thing with that revelation is that I've been tracking it. I've been really enjoying this whole trend that's been going on recently of independent bottlers who are long established, especially, who are just picking up distilleries where they're starting their own or taking over a distillery. So things like Gordon MacPhail taking over Ben Romack, or the Ardnamurchan being started by Adelphi. I didn't realize that the same thing was with Kilchoman. What was the independent bottling scene like for you, for the family?
Well, I was about 16 at the time, so I wasn't directly involved in it. But my dad, he actually came from a wine background. He's a wine lover, and that's what he did for 20 years when he was living in England. And then when he moved to Scotland, he kind of, I don't know whether there's like a natural progression into Scotch whisky, or he just kind of was sort of getting in touch with the heritage in Scotland. But he kind of moved away from the wine, went into whiskey, and he wasn't a big, independent bottler by any means. His brand was called Caledonian Selection. He bottled about 50 or 60 casks a year, I think. And it was kind of a very small business, and he was kind of looking for his next project. He's a bit of a sort of serial entrepreneur.
Have they had thoughts of reviving the independent bottling and doing something like Springbank does with Cadenheads?
I think it's a big challenge these days. Going out and starting out as an independent bottler. I think we would have connections, so there are ways that we could kind of get a a sort of leg up, you know, by maybe selling some of our casks or swapping casks with people. But to go out and start an independent bottling company now is a big challenge, because the demand for all those well-known brands is so high. It's so hard to get hold of really good quality independently bottled stuff.
Yeah.
But as I say, I don't have first-hand experience of that, but that's sort of my view from the outside.
This is just to let people know, I'm recording this video at 7:30 in the morning, and this is the most wonderful smelling breakfast.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the sort of classic flavor profile of Kilchoman, you know, you have Isla, and at one end of the Isla spectrum, you have probably sort of Ardbeg, Laphroaig, Lagavulin, you know, and then at the other end, you have Bruichladdich, you know, the classic laddie unpeated, and Bunnahabhain very lightly peated. And then Kilchoman sort of sits towards that heavier end, but we have a huge amount of like fresh, floral, vibrant flavor, and that really comes through with bourbon barrel maturation. And this is relatively young, you know, it probably averages about 5 years old. And the combination of the bourbon and the sherry casks gives some caramel, some vanilla, but also a bit of richness and fruitiness. And the Kilchoman, the classic kind of Kilchoman flavors, if you like, are that peat smoke citrus balance. So, you know, you have that really distinct sort of, in this case, I'd say salty, maritime peat smoke coming through, but you have this lovely, fresh, sort of citrusy, zesty sweetness as well, which kind of gives it this very broad spectrum of flavors. You know, it's not too heavy, it's not too earthy, and it also has this really like lovely light floral side.
Yeah, it's interesting on the nose. That and I don't know why I'm thinking about this at breakfast, but it smells a little bit like making a margarita out of mezcal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's it has that slightly sort of you know, meaty, almost smoky kind of flavor, rather than it being excessively sort of salty or excessively earthy. You know, it has that nice meaty, sometimes more so with like sherry cask maturation. A lot of people identify like smoky bacon and barbecue flavors. With Mackett Bay, I think you have that kind of herbaceous, smoky, sort of farmyardy kind of flavor profile.
Yeah, and to bring out the whiskey asterisk early, you know, the idea of, you know, you say something, but it has to have an asterisk and then at the bottom, but in a good way. A little bit of rubber, on the nose, which is I like that a lot. Nice.
I mean, we set out to produce an Isla whiskey, you know, so this uses 50 ppm malted barley. So by anyone's standard, a heavily peated malt, but we have long fermentation times, which adds real sort of floral citrus flavors. We have very small stills, and we operate them in a way where we only take a very fine cut on the spirit run. And that means we have a very, very clean spirit. You know, so I don't know if you've ever tasted our new make, but
actually not. I look forward to doing this though.
Yeah, well, you know, my dad went out and built a distillery that was designed to make really good quality young whiskey, because he didn't have enough money to wait 10 years for the whiskey to be good. So, you know, we invested in the whiskey at these stages, particularly the fermentation and the distillation. And then, you know, we invest in the casks as well. The bourbon barrels, you know, the 90% of this whiskey is matured in bourbon barrels. We only use fresh bourbon barrels, and they all come from Buffalo Trace Distillery.
Oh wow!
Straight to Isla. They're always whole, and we always fill them, you know, as quickly as we can. Yeah. And the sort of subtle points within that really pay back in terms of like having a good quality whiskey at 5 years old rather than 8 years old. You know, there's great consistency because we're only buying from Buffalo Trace. The freshness, the impact, and the speed of maturation is much better because you're using fresh casks that haven't been broken down and they've been filled straight away. And that that really pays back, you know, in terms of the quality, the balance, the maturity of the whiskey at a relatively young age.
I'm always intrigued about the idea of actually buying full intact casks and shipping them around the world, because you're basically just shipping air.
Yeah, I mean, they stack them in. You wouldn't believe how many they get in a container. I don't know how. They're either like absolute man mountains in Kentucky, because the only way they could get these barrels in sometimes. They literally physically pick them up over their head and put them in. And we open up the container at Kilchoman, and it comes. I don't know if there is a key, but we don't have the key. And you saw this bolt off. The doors basically spring open, and barrels just fall out. So it's absolutely lethal.
It's like playing a game of Donkey Kong or something. You've got to jump over the barrels.
Yeah, there's the most amazing smell that comes out, and you know, all the bungs are in, so the casks still have liquid in them. Yeah, not very much. And you know, if you compare that, if you just took one of those barrels, broke them down, and left it overnight, you know, all of that's gone. You know, all of that flavor that you want to impart into whiskey is gone. Absolutely. So you know, it's a subtle point, but it really, really makes a difference.
As one of the interesting releases we've just had in the store recently with local distilleries, I've done a bit of research and I can't find anything. So if you know of one, please let us know. But one of the bottles behind me here, let's see if I can find it. Yeah. The wine cask Glensanich. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first single malt whiskey that has been finished in a wine cask where the wine was actually produced by the same place that made the whiskey, and it was literally emptied and filled in the same day, because they're a vineyard as well as a distillery.
I have no idea. I haven't heard of anywhere else doing that. Certainly not as whiskey, you know.
But the idea of like using the cask as fresh as possible, that makes a lot of sense.
Especially, you know, if you're maturing that whiskey for 8, 10, 12, 25 years, you know, it becomes less and less important. But when you're basically saying, okay, well, we want to bottle this young, or you know, we're planning for this to really peak in terms of the quality at somewhere between 5 and 10 years old, then yeah, you know, you've got to have a very, very fresh cask. Yeah. And what started off in the first sort of instance as being something that, well, okay, don't have enough money, we've got to start paying bills in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, has kind of developed into this thing where, well, this is actually a great whiskey, you know, as it is. So we have sometimes sort of toyed with the idea of kind of moving this age on, and we do plan to do that. But, you know, that bottling it young, if you're a fan of Isla whiskey, all of that flavor is there, and it's really vibrant and fresh at that young age. So provided you don't have like that off fainty flavor that you sometimes get with young whiskies, and I don't think this has by any means, you know, all of that real Isla character that you might love in Isla whiskies is there right at the front of the palate.
Absolutely. And being a store that likes to concentrate, not concentrate, but we do a lot of independent bottle stuff here, partially because the way the system works here in BC, we've got the government stores and the private stores. So we try and carry things that the government stores don't. So we have a lot of independent bottle stuff. So my idea of the quintessential Isla whiskey is a 7-year-old Kalila, because you see that a lot with independently bottled whiskey. And I love that kind of age range for a heavily peated Isla malt. I think it works much better than, like, I'd take a 7-year-old Kalila over the 12 any day.
Yeah, I think there's always been and I think there always will be a sort of such a simplicity to older whiskey is better. That people, it's very easy for people to buy into the fact that an older whiskey is better, it's more expensive, but it just so often isn't the case. You know, no. There's so many factors that go into it. So
the worst whiskey I've ever had in my life was in its 50s.
Yeah, I struggle to get excited about those. I have to say, like, you know, when people have them at shows and things, they're like, "Oh, do you want to try this 50-year-old whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, I kind of know what it's going to taste like."
Yeah, age for age's sake. It's just it's why. There's
my father. We now that I've matured slightly, I understand his perspective. But I used to have this battle with my dad about, like, just don't bottle this, you know, at 8 years old. Like here's, just leave it for another 5 years and we can charge loads more for it, kind of thing. or at least we'd have more of it and stuff. And he's like, no, it's not going to get better.
Yeah,
so
it's good. It's ready.
Yeah. And now I understand his perspective a bit more. But you know, quite often things don't get better after 8 years old.
No, and you've got to have so much intricate experience to be able to know if it will or not. And the one company that I will pretty much always trust for like really, really old stuff is Gordon MacPhail, because I've been doing it for, you know, hundreds of years. And I think that there's a real, like, you have to have a real understanding of how the whiskey is maturing in the barrel to be able to confidently leave it that long. And it's tricky. And with a new distillate like Kilchoman, you don't have yet a full understanding of what that's going to be like in a 20-year maturation cycle. And you also have to plan from the get-go. You can't put it in a first fill or virgin oak or something and expect it's going to be great in 30 years. You've got to stick it in a refill or something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the fresh bourbon barrels that we're buying, you know, they absolutely peak, I would say, before they're 10 years old, certainly. At cask strength, you know, you can maybe even go a little bit younger, even at cask strength. That sounds a strange thing to say, but yeah. I sometimes think, you know, cask strength, that weight of ABV kind of gives you a whole new dimension. So
absolutely. And I think that's something that people have a lot more confidence in these days, probably partially because of the success of Kilchoman. I don't think people like Ardnamurchan would be releasing 4 and 5 year old whiskey had it not been a tried and tested thing with Kilchoman.
I think it's also helps that we got the peat smoke. You know, I was talking to the guys at Arran yesterday, and I was asking them how Lag Distillery is coming along, and that sort of, you know, because Arran, when they first started in 1995, you know, the whiskeys, they sort of struggled to find something that really worked in terms of a style until it was sort of getting on to kind of 6, 8, 10, 12 years old. Whereas with Lag, you know, because you've got that heavily peated malt that you're using at a young age, you've got something that people really want, and a flavor dimension that gives it real depth. So, you know, it certainly helps with Kilchoman that you've got that peat smoke to kind of work towards with a younger bottling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will announce that this bottling is, of course, available at the Strath right now, unless it's somehow sold out between the video recording and airing. But if it does, it'll be back very shortly. And because it's on this video, every single Dram Association member, all 1,200 of you, can get 10% off. So the regular price right now is $108.61. Canadian, and with 10% off, that puts it under $100 for the flagship model. That is $97.75, which is a stunning price. Beautiful. So we're moving on next to the other half of the flagship equation. I think if this is the Toyota Corolla, then I guess we're going for the Camry next.
Yeah, sure. If Toyota's your brand, then yeah. So Machia Bay, as I was saying, is mainly bourbon barrel maturation, and it is quite light in color, as you can see. And the next one we're going to taste is Sanaig, and as you can see, it is significantly darker. And that is because it's matured in sherry casks, well, mainly sherry casks. Yours is a little bit lighter, so there you can see. Is yours a bit lighter? I think
the same, I think. The funny thing is that this one has the NFC chip.
Oh, does it? Right.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed that you've actually put the little chart, the little bar on the front, so you can see the bourbon to sherry ratio in really easy to understand graphic. Yeah,
I mean, the cask is so important, and especially when you've got such a contrasting flavor influence, of sherry compared to bourbon. The color is different. The whiskey completely changes in every way, I would say. The color is obviously significantly darker. The nose is recognizable in that there is some peat smoke, but the sweetness is much more of a kind of cooked fruits kind of sweetness rather than the citrus sweetness with Machia Bay, or maybe even like a cinnamony sweetness.
Nice.
And the fruitiness is much more, as I said, rich, hook fruits, kind of everything that you associate with sherry cask maturation. It's all coming through.
Now, apparently, I trimmed my nails too far back. I'm having a hard time opening this. I'll get there. I'll start at the bottom instead.
Yeah, there's no rush.
The amount of videos of me just fumbling over a bottle. You'd think after opening so many of them, I'd have it down by now. There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I have to say, the vast majority of Kilchomans that I have had on my own personal shelf have been the sherry cask ones. And that's not to say I prefer sherry cask whiskey in general, but I think the spirit works really, really well with sherry.
Yeah, I think the combination of peat smoke and sherry is something that it's almost like it works extremely well, but also I don't think there's masses of like really big sherry influenced Isla whiskies on the market. You know, there are sort of a bit here and there, but nothing that's really like full on sherry cask maturation. And
I know it's different in different markets, but here in BC, you can get them, but they're generally almost twice the price of this.
Yeah. No, so I mean, you have, as I said earlier on, you know, you have the same DNA here, but it's really just taken in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
And this is, the bar says, you know, it doesn't actually say like cask maturation, it says cask influence. So with Mackay Bay, it's literally 90% bourbon cask maturation, 10% sherry cask maturation. And it's not a finish or anything like that. It's literally, we take the whiskey from the bourbon barrels, take the whiskey from the sherry casks, and we combine them. With Saneg, we use some of the sherry influence comes from a full maturation in sherry casks, Oloroso sherry, and some of it comes from finishing bourbon casks in the Oloroso sherry. But it's always Oloroso. We say the influence is kind of 70, 80% in terms of, you know, the influence on the whiskey itself. And we use Oloroso hogsheads. So these are 250 litre casks, and they tend to be made from a combination of European and American oak. The bodega that we work with in Spain called Miguel Martin, he buys in some wood from America to make into staves, and also some European. But they haven't, the hogsheads, which are slightly smaller than the butts, well, they're a lot smaller than the butts, they're half the size, slightly bigger than a bourbon barrel. They are slightly newer oak. So you have a kind of slight influence from like a virgin oak, bit of tannin kind of coming through, as well as that, you know, that sherry influence.
Nice. And of course, the higher sort of ratio of wood to liquid contact as well, with the size difference between the butt.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have, with a smaller cask, like you know, it's not a small cask by any means.
It's smaller.
It's a smaller cask than the big, you know, half-ton butts. But you know, they are, they're newer oak, and so they're a bit smaller. So you just have more influence in a shorter period of time. That's why we use them for Saneg, because again, it's a non-aged statement. It's below 8 years old, so we want to get that flavor in pretty quick.
Yeah, nice. Ooh. Oh yeah. Yeah, that is delightfully. I can't quite come up with the word. Familiar, I guess.
It's much more sort of mellowed, rounded. It's got this kind of, like, for me actually, I rarely pick it up, but I'm getting a lot of like orange peel, kind of Christmas, you know, spices, cinnamon, orange, like all that kind of stuff. Leathery, that kind of influence coming through.
Dare I say a little touch of sort of a peppermint, less the flavor, more the effect. It's got that sort of slightly cooling effect on the tongue.
Yeah, some people pick up on a sort of like, well, it's maybe associated with like that rubbery flavor that you picked up with Mackay Bay. Maybe that sort of transfers into that kind of influence with the Saneg.
Nice.
Because these are exactly the same when they're put into cask. It's exactly the same liquid.
Yeah.
But the bourbon barrel takes it one way, and the sherry cask takes it in a different direction.
Nice. So speaking of the virgin distillate being exactly the same, where is the peat from in Kilchoman? Where do you harvest?
So all of the peat comes from Isla. For our 100% Isla whiskies that we're malting ourselves, we cut that peat from around Gilcombe, which is within a mile of the distillery.
Is that relatively high elevation for Isla?
No, it's pretty low. It's probably about sea level.
Interesting, because I've been trying to figure out the different areas that people harvest the peat from and the flavors that come from it, because of course peat, not all peat is the same. It's from different vegetable matter, and I've always had this idea that the low-lying ones are probably more likely to give the iodine flavor, because it's probably more likely that was underwater. It was probably more seaweed. But yeah, I mean, this has completely thrown that through a loop.
Well, I think the thing with the low-lying areas of Isla is that they're literally soaked with sea spray. I mean, so you've got Gilcombe, which is in front of the distillery, and then about half a mile west, you've got Macha Bay. And if you're stood there and there's a westerly storm, you'll see the waves of fine spray just rolling across the ground. So that salty flavor. I think if you compared any Isla peated whiskey with a mainland peated whiskey from the Highlands or something, then you really would get quite a difference. Much more of a kind of ashy, oaky smoke compared to a much salty, iodine smoke on Isla. But it is cut from different areas on the island.
Yeah, nice. Well, okay, so before I get too far, I just want to remind everyone that, of course, the Snake is available. And like I said, there's a small chance it might have sold out as well between now and the actual video airing on YouTube. But if it is unavailable, it will be back. And the current price, it's $124.26, which means with your discount, it is $111.83. For peat and sherry combined, that is, a bargain.
It's been really popular in the last couple of years because we launched it. I think we launched it sort of 2015 or 16, and it sort of took a little while to establish, and now we almost can't keep up. So, so it's really, I think, with a lot of people being at home, they're kind of exploring what's out there within maybe the stuff that they've already kind of dipped their toe into. So
yeah, that's one thing I've been meaning to ask actually from a Scottish perspective is I think a lot of people, specifically in Scotland, because there's so much more of a pub culture than there is here, probably are used to deciding on what bottles they buy based on what they drink at the pub. And of course, pubs have probably got the same whiskey that they have always been bringing in. It's really hard to persuade a pub to bring in a new whiskey sometimes. So I've been wondering, since the pubs were closed for a while, did people start branching out? Did you see people drinking different whiskeys?
I think anything, in the premium sphere of kind of booze, whether it's craft beer, craft wine, premium spirits, everyone's been treating themselves to a better bottle at home rather than maybe just pouring whatever they can find at the bar down their neck. So I think we do probably rely on the sort of pub trade to introduce people to us in normal times, but thankfully people seem to have been very proactive in kind of doing that job in the absence of the bars. So yeah, and
they've got YouTube videos that they can watch along with now. I'm sure this is not your first.
No, this is a very, very sort of feasible time for me. I've been doing, I mean, I don't know if it's probably a bad thing to say, but I have been getting up in the middle of the night. So you could have got me out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I probably would have, found it hard to turn you down. There was a period when sort of lockdown stuff first came in, where I was maybe doing 3 or 4 a week, in the middle of the night.
Wow.
Which is interesting because you either stay up and drink until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and that can go one of two ways, or you wake up and are sort of bleary-eyed drinking in the middle of the night and then going back to bed.
Yeah, you can always tell the videos with the brand ambassadors that have just rolled out of bed because the voice is a little lower and the sort of eyes are half shut.
Yeah, well, it's the middle of the night. If he kicked you out of bed and told you to do a whiskey tasting, you'd probably sound something similar.
Absolutely. That's why I think doing the 7 o'clock, 3 o'clock split between BC and the UK here works perfectly. Both of us are somewhat with it.
Yeah, you're gonna have a hell of a morning, and then things will just crash slightly in the afternoon, probably.
It's going to be great. The Wednesdays are delivery days. I'm going to be like taking pallets off of trucks and stuff. It's
okay. Maybe stand clear of the forklift.
Yeah. Lovely. So let's move on to the third whiskey in today's little lineup, which is the whiskey we are launching. So this is, as yet, has not been available at our store. But is available right now. I'm gonna pretend my mouse is a big red button and say it is available right now at strathliquor.com. And I'll tell you the price. Why not? Its regular price is $159.04. It's on sale for 10% off, of course, for $143.14. We only have 12 bottles, and this mystery whiskey is, drum roll please, the 2021 edition of Loch Gorm. Beautiful. Yeah. It comes with a nice little tag and everything. There's no NFC chip though. I want my money back. Wow, 17,000 in this batch. Cool.
Yeah, so that the tag sort of gives you the finer detail on the particular edition. So every edition of Loch Gorm is a full maturation in Oloroso sherry casks. It's different from Sanay because they are the larger Oloroso sherry butts. And also it's different because it's usually about twice the age. So this is a minimum of 9 years old. But I believe it had also some, 10-year-old at least whiskey in it. So 24 Oloroso sherry butts that were selected and vatted for this particular edition.
I do enjoy how you're more than happy to give the information away, but you don't want to highlight it necessarily because it doesn't seemingly say an age statement on the label anywhere. It only says on the neck tag.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's mainly because of the way our labels are set up, actually.
Oh, fair enough.
Quite anywhere that the age. But also, I think it's a strange thing. Our take on kind of age statements are that either it's an age statement that's like 15, 16, 20, or where it's nothing almost. And so because we talk about, the whiskey being good when it's good, it seems slightly sort of, what do you mean? We shouldn't do that and then put an age right on the front of the whiskey. So
but at the same time, you're not trying to hide it. It's simply a thing of like the age is it's useful sometimes to say the age. I'm actually a big fan of non-age statement whiskies because I don't think the age should be the be-all and end-all of why you release a whiskey when you release it. But sometimes, especially with more special editions and things, it's nice to have an age, especially with more expensive whiskies, because it gives you a better idea of what to expect sometimes. And if you're in a position where you're not getting to try before you buy and you're not getting to read as many reviews if it's a newer release or something, the more information you can get on the label, the more informed you are going to be as a consumer. But at the same point, this is not, Kilchoman 9. That is the 9 part of this is not the story, right?
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of the Loch Gorm actually came before Sanay in terms of like the limited editions and how they came. My father, he always wanted to have, a regularly available sherry cask maturation Kilchoman. And Loch Gorm kind of came about as that originally. And then each year after, we've kind of done a new version of it. So we do one bottling every year and, usually about 20 Oloroso butts that usually vary from 9 to kind of 11, 12, 13 years old. And then we don't do another one till the following year. So it's kind of a limited edition, but it has a regularity to it.
Nice. Small batch limited edition series.
Yeah,
Love it.
you're very patient. You really let the bottle sit there and just sort of surmise it.
Well, I've got to let people see what it looks like full before I before I butcher the foil. All right, so here we go for the pop. Lovely.
You do get a good pop with Kilchoman bottles.
You do, yeah.
One of the
good solid corks as well.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a similar style to the others. It's the same starting point. It's the same spirit, but with the Oloroso butts with a 9 years minimum maturation, you have I describe it as more of a breadth of flavor. Sannig is lovely. It's rounded. It's kind of soft. It's got this nice kind of sherry Isla little niche. But I think with Loch Gorm, you kind of have more of a spectrum of flavors, right? The way you've got more lightness, more citrusy flavor coming through. And similarly, you've got real spicy kind of licorice, dark chocolate kind of flavor as well from the sherry.
Mm-hmm. So right from the get-go on the nose, the difference for me between the Sannig and the Loch Gorm so far, the Sannig, it was wonderfully complex. It was a lot of wonderful things going on. But if you equate it almost to a musical kind of idea, the Sannig felt more like a rock band with a front man, and the front man being Pete. Whereas on the nose, at least, the Loch Gorm so far, it doesn't feel like it's got one person in the spotlight. It feels like it's more of an orchestral experience.
That's a very, very good description. That you can't have come up with that just for this whiskey. You must have said that about something else in the past.
I've talked about instruments in orchestras before, but I've never talked about the front man of a band.
Yeah, no, it's a very good description. Because you have that. I kind of think we're talking about the same thing, really, aren't we? Like there's a huge amount of influence from different kind of ends of the flavor spectrum coming in. So yeah, it's always been popular. Many people expect the Loch Gorm to have like almost more sherry influence than Sannig.
Yeah, and it's just more integrated.
It doesn't quite work like that. With the butts, the bigger Oloroso butts, they're much better for longer maturation. If we matured Sannig out for 10, 12 years in Oloroso hogsheads, the flavor would just be too much from the sherry, from the hogsheads. It would overwhelm the whiskey. You can see the color at a young age with Sannig is really very, very dark. And so that flavor would quickly become imbalanced. With the butts, you have this, slower, steadier, more complex maturation that will go longer as well. That you could leave that. I don't think this is fantastic now, but I wouldn't say with huge confidence that it wouldn't get any better. I think if you left that a little bit longer, that sherry influence would come in more. But it's fantastic as it is. You have a lovely balance between classic Isla flavors and the characteristics of the sherry.
Yeah, it's fun. It's refined but not restrained. It feels like I feel like the Sannig is like a Hawaiian shirt, and this is more like a pinstripe. It's still more interesting than plain, but it's a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean the word my dad always uses when he's describing Loch Gorm and what he sets out to achieve with Loch Gorm is balance. He's looking for a balance in flavor. With his Sannig, we're looking for a big hit of sherry, that distinct peat smoke flavor, and for someone to sit down and go, wow, that's a big sherry Isla whiskey.
Yeah.
The Loch Gorm, I think we're looking for something that is a little bit more subtle, complex.
It feels designed. It feels like it's had more like human touch, more thought almost.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's absolutely the case because there's 24 barrels and they're each one are tasted and, evaluated before they're combined together. So
that is something quite magnificent, isn't it? I don't think I've had a Loch Gorm since I think it's 2018, maybe 2019.
Yeah.
When did they start doing these? Was that?
We did, I want to say in 2013, we did a release that was in black, and it was called the Sherry Cask release. And then that was the first one that it was a limited edition and people went bananas for it. And so my dad sort of decided, oh, well, I better do that again. So he did it the following year and called it Loch Gorm. And then it's been sort of Loch Gorm and then the year as the edition ever since then.
Nice. I love it. So where is Loch Gorm? Is that?
So you have the sort of the distillery on the west coast of Isla. So if you're familiar with Isla, then it's sort of, where is it? It's not far from Bruichladdich. It's over the hill from Bruichladdich. It's really not far to walk, but you quite easily get lost. So don't try it. But so it's sort of on that west coast, and immediately we're in farmland. So we've got green fields and barley fields immediately surrounding us. But there's a big bowl, and in that big bowl is peat bog around it, and then the largest freshwater loch on Isla.
Oh, cool.
And it's Loch Gorm. Gorm in Gaelic is blue, so it's a blue lake, and it's not actually blue at all. The peat that from the water running over it is very, very dark. So it's very, very brackish brown water, but. Because
isn't Glasgow mean greenfield? I think false advertising is part of the stick, right?
Yeah. But basically, because it's got low headlands around it, and the sun sets in the west, the loch in the evenings on a sunny evening will look absolutely crystal clear blue.
Oh wow!
So
that's really cool.
Yeah, and then you get up close and you realise, well, this isn't. Bit like Glasgow, yeah.
But did you know at 7 o'clock in the evening at the perfect angle, Glasgow shines green? No.
Yeah. And then so we name a lot of our whiskies after the local landmarks. So there's a beautiful 6-mile sandy beach, and that's Macha Bay. Sannig is an inlet that's north of the distillery. Loch Gorm, as I said, is not far. We've also got ones like Cool Point and Saligo Bay, Loch Grignard, which is a hard one to say if you're not from Isla, because there's very subtle pronunciation. Most Isla words are pretty much as they sound, but Grignard is a hard one.
Grignard. That sounds almost Nordic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it probably comes from that, because it's an estuary that is very shallow. So I would have thought absolutely made for Viking longships.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So we are just over halfway through, which means that it is time to do a little sub-segment of our tastings that we always do, where we shine a bit of a spotlight on our presenter. So we've already learned a little bit of your whiskey background and how you got into whiskey through the family, of course. When did you start actually drinking whiskey, though? I mean, it's okay. You're allowed to say 16. I don't think the liquor inspectors are going to be watching the video.
It was much earlier than 16.
Oh, perfect.
My parents didn't love me, so they sent me to boarding school. And when at boarding school, you need to find entertainment somehow, and that usually involves drinking. And scenes as there used to be the odd barrel like that my dad would have delivered to the house, and he would need to get samples or whatever. And so, but he would empty it, and then there would be the last dregs of the barrel left. We used to take the bottles out of that and tuck that away somewhere, smuggle it into school, and drink that. I was pretty much the only one who was up for drinking like cask strength single casks. I guess we were probably. Well, I was at boarding school since I was about 9, but I probably didn't start drinking until I was about 14 or so. But yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
First whiskey independently bottled, single casks. So I'm a very refined palate from a young age.
Personally bottled single cask.
Yeah.
Did you make your own little labels?
No, it was usually like just any old bottle we could find, and you'd upend it into a bucket and then fill the bucket. Yeah.
So do your parents know about this already, or if they watch this video, are you in for a bit of a...
No, I think by the time we got sort of a couple of suspensions from school or whatever else later, they sussed out what was going on. But I think it's sort of a rite of passage, really. So
Amazing,
so
amazing.
They can't blame us for making our own fun when they send us, 3 hours drive away to get to school.
No, that is more than fair. I thought I had it hard being sent off to Catholic school. I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was it's probably much the same, to be honest.
All right. Well, we didn't have to smuggle whiskey into the school because we just snuck into the chapel and had the communion wine.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. So outside of Kilchoman, what is your favorite distillery? And this can be anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be Scottish. You can say Buffalo Trace simply because you like the fact that they give you the barrels. So.
We pay for them.
Fair enough.
They get money for that. No, in terms of distillery or the whiskey itself.
Well, how about one of each?
Okay, so my favorite distillery is Springbank because it's the most bizarre place I've ever been in my life. In the best possible way. It is a working museum. And it seems very strange that places like that exist in some ways these days. I also love their whiskey. I tend to drink the whiskey as much as anything from places that I like the people who made it. So the people at Springbank are nice. I'll give you all sorts of answers. So on Isla, I would probably drink Ardbeg or Kalila, independently bottled Kalila. Is very nice, even though Kalila is like the opposite end of the spectrum from what we do.
Factory.
Ardbeg is quite in the ballpark of us. So those two, I enjoy them a lot. Glendronach is one that I found myself drinking a lot of for a while. Single cask Glendronach in the teens kind of thing. They're delicious. Trying to think what else. Arran, I give people Arran a lot. Arran because they're nice as well. I like them, and it's a pretty easy one to give people. They're not gonna pour it down the sink if you give them a bottle of Arran. But sometimes with heated whiskies, it can go either way. So
a bit more of a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you, because being in Edinburgh, which is where I started drinking whiskey, I used to work at a little pub called the Royal Oak on Infirmary Street. And our bar whiskey and how I got into whiskey, just being given so many drams of it by grizzled old folk musicians, was Black Bottle. So what is your go-to if you're at the pub whiskey? Like,
sure, I honestly don't drink whiskey in the pub very much.
Oh, fair enough.
I feel like I'm getting fleeced, so I really don't do it. If I do drink it, do you know Chichter's Landing in Leith?
Oh yeah.
And you can throw the hoop.
Mm-hmm.
You throw a hoop onto the back bar and it lands on something, and then that's pretty. But on Isla, people drink Black Bottle a lot, or they used to, as a pint and a dram of Black Bottle. But yeah, I have to say I couldn't remember the last time I ordered a whiskey in a bar, which is probably a terrible thing to say. I'm sorry, all the bartenders.
Hey, at least you're honest. So you're a beer guy when it comes to the bar?
Yeah, it just seems easier. I'll probably get drunk too quickly if I was drinking like whiskey in a bar, because I'd just be like, I don't know.
And to a certain extent, like a whiskey in a bar is almost exactly the same as a whiskey at home. So I get where you're coming from of like, why pay the extra markup? I mean, it's not like you're not going to a bar. Why at the bar, why not have something that is different? Like you can't have a draft beer at home, really.
Yeah, well, I think because I'm normally going to festivals, like that's, whiskey shows and whiskey festivals, my opportunity to drink and experiment or taste new things, that's when I do it. When I go to a bar, I don't really want to pay like 10 quid for a dram of something that's I'm not sure about.
That's why you need to differentiate like drinking for exploration and interest and drinking whiskey just because you enjoy whiskey. And you need to find like teachers or something, like a really lower price range bottle that you can enjoy still at a pub.
Well, there used to be Glenmorangie or LVMH used to have B&J, or was it B&J? What was it? I I can't remember. They had a blend for a while, and I drank that for a little while.
Nice.
But,
Beautiful. Well, let's move on to our last pair of whiskies. We have heard this whiskey name drop several times already in this presentation, and it's about time we actually brought one to the table. This is the 2021 edition of 100% Isla.
Yeah. So this is the sort of, this bottling is really why my dad started Kilchoman. You know, he wanted to build a new distillery, you know, the first new distillery on Isla in 125 years. And he wanted to do it in a way that wasn't just like the other distilleries on the island, you know. He felt that the distillery needed to have a different approach to the whole, you know, whiskey making process. So yeah, he positioned the distillery on a farm, and we farm about 3,000 acres. We have cattle down on the shore near Mackay Bay. We have sheep up on the hills. We have about 350 sheep. We only have about 50 cattle. We're not very big cattle farmers, but the main part of what we do is the barley that we grow. So we sow about 100 acres every year. We hope to harvest about 250 tons of barley in the summer, and then over the following year we will malt that ourselves, traditional malt floor. At Kilchoman, we'll peat it, we'll distill individual barley varieties. So every year we grow 2 varieties, and we'll malt them separately, distill them separately, to look at the influence of the flavor from the variety. And we select roughly, well, this is a vatting of 33 casks. Similar to Loch Gorm, we do 1 bottling every year. And it's a lighter peating level. So it's slightly confusing. Some might say that it's called 100% Isla, but it's actually a lower peating level. So it's not as smoky as the Mackay Bay, Saneg, Loch Gorm. It's about 20 ppm compared to the others, which are 50 ppm.
Yeah. But of course, the ppm of the barley doesn't necessarily correspond to the peated, like the taste at the end of the day. I mean, the big example for that is, of course, Lagavulin and Kalila use exactly the same barley, but the end product is quite different. Would you say that the end product is noticeably different in peat level?
It's certainly on the nose. Okay. You know, so if you nose this, there's very rarely is there a distinctly smoky flavor coming from the 100% Isla spirit. On the palate, there's not a huge difference in terms of the peat smoke, but what there is a lot silkier, it's a lot creamier, and it's a lot more oily. You know, sort of thick, viscous on the palate.
Nice. So for a brief period, you fooled me. As I mentioned before the video, I'm in graphics a little bit as well. I work as a graphic designer at the Strath, and I thought when I first pulled this bottle out that you'd quite madly screen printed all of the bottles. And like, why did you pay like an extra $10 a bottle for that? But that is a really, really well placed like see-through sticker. But you have to really look for it to notice that it's a sticker. That's very well done.
Thank you. So it's the 100% Isla we wanted to go for a clear label so that it just was quite different from the other colors. The only other color that you can go that isn't a color is no color.
Very striking. And although my bottle looks a lot better than yours.
Does it?
Yeah, because I don't have that big garish purple UK tax sticker on it.
Oh yeah, that is a bit much.
Yeah, it looks so much cleaner without it.
Yeah. Just to make sure they get their cut.
Oh, don't worry. The government always gets the cut.
So this is a vatting of, as I said, 33 casks. It's 2 barley varieties. So it's Optic and Publican barley. Yeah. And it came from 4 different barley harvests. So it came from 2007, 2009, 2011 barley harvests. So those years preceded the year that it would have been distilled. So the oldest liquid was from 2008, and the youngest liquid was, distilled in 2012.
Cool.
So it's a combination of 9 to 13-year-old. Is that right? Something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was bottled in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. So 9 to 13-year-old spirit, and it's 26 bourbon barrels and 7 Oloroso sherry butts.
Oh,
so
cool.
it actually works out a kind of 60-40 bourbon
Nice.
barrel maturation to sherry cask maturation.
So halfway between the Corolla and the Camry.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Very cool. Yeah, a hybrid of the base styles.
Yeah, and this is actually, I mean, I said that it would come through more on the palate, the peat smoke, but there's very little peat smoke on the palate. I think with the sherry cask maturation, this is bottled at 50%, so there is a little bit of more structure, perhaps, or maybe not structure, but a little bit more power initially on the palate, and then there's a lot of fruity, really quite light flavor coming through on the palate.
So if this is the results of the 100% your own barley at a lighter ppm, is it that all of your own barley comes out at this ppm, but once it's mixed with the external barley, it becomes higher, or?
We don't mix the barley, so
okay.
We literally for Mackay Bay and Sanay, we buy the barley from the Port Ellen maltings.
Cool.
On Isla, and for the 100% Isla, we grow it ourselves, malt it ourselves, and then distill. They're each distilled separately, matured separately.
Cool.
So
for some reason, I always had it in my head that there was always a little bit of your own barley in the other ones as well, but it makes sense. Why would you?
Well, that is how they make, so the professional malting houses, when they're creating a specific spec of malted barley, they'll take heavily peated barley and lightly peated barley, or maybe unpeated barley, and then they'll combine them to hit a certain spec. So if you want 35 ppm, maybe that involves like 100 tons of this and 30 tons of that, whereas if you want 50 ppm, maybe it's 70 tons and 50 tons of the other. So it's that's maybe where you
so when we were talking earlier about the where you're harvesting your own peat, that is really only for this bottling.
Yeah, so the peat is, well, the barley is harvested ourselves. We sow particular barley varieties and to maximize the flavor. The peat is hand cut peat. That's cut from, as I said, less than a mile from the distillery. It's all very much a hands-on process for making all of our whiskies, but it's just that the growing and the malting is also done for this one.
Yeah.
Ourselves.
Because for me on the nose, it does smell a touch more deeper vegetal. I almost do want to say iodine-y.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's less of the raw smoke, but there's a little bit more of the other things that go along.
Yeah. And then, I mean, when I go back to it, I definitely get a bit of peat smoke, but maybe just initially when you transition from the heavy 50 ppm heavily malted Gilcombe to the lighter, then you're fooled in that first.
You got to take a sip of water in between to really appreciate it. And that, I really like this. I'm a big fan of lighter peated whiskey in general. I love peat and I really enjoy drinking the heavily peated stuff, but I really enjoy it when it is a little bit more integrated with other flavors. I think that's one of the reasons I really, really enjoyed the Gilcombe, is that the peat was still there, but there were so many other flavors that were sort of matching it in intensity. And I think I find that a lot with this whiskey as well, is that the peat is matched with the flavors around it. It doesn't feel like it's sticking out.
Yeah.
And for those at home who are watching this video and trying to equate what sort of level of peat from other bottlings you might have tried that this feels like, it feels very, to me, like Ardmore kind of levels of peat. It's like a very, very coastal Isla version of Ardmore.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we're looking for was to slightly, for a different style, something that was quite clearly different. And yeah, I mean, it works in that instance. And then on the box there, you can kind of, it gives you all the information about the whole process from from the barley fields, the harvest, through the malting, the peating, the distillation and everything. It's all tracks.
Yeah.
And we bottle everything ourselves. So not just this bottling, but we also have, we bottle everything on site. So everything is matured on site. Everything uses Isla peat. There are Isla distilleries that don't use, malt that's peated on Isla. So we try and do everything, right. One of the things that we don't do is that we don't sell to independent bottlers, and we don't sell to blenders. So everything we are producing, we intend to bottle as Kilchoman single malt. So
I think you sold some casks early on in your life, though, didn't you?
Very early on, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm fairly sure I've had an SNWS one.
Yeah, I think we did 2, maybe 3. And I think in total we've done less than 5, sold less than 5 casks. And I think most of those were for the SMWS. And then there's a guy in the States called Joshua Hatton, and he has an independent bottling company along with his friend who we sold one cask to. They were called, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't watch this.
Well,
One Nation. Oh my god.
Oh, Single Cask Nation.
Single Cask Nation.
Yeah, I like those guys. Yeah, it's the Jewish whiskey company, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to single them out as being Jewish. That's actually what they're called. I'm not.
I
always feel weird when I say that. It's like, oh yeah, that's the Jewish whiskey company. Like, no, they're called that. So one thing that means that you don't have to do that, though, is of course you have a very good single cask program yourself. There's lots of bottlings of Kilchoman specifically for different regions or stores. We've had a couple here in BC that have been phenomenal. We had a rum cask one a couple of years ago that was bottled specifically for BC. And I assume that's something that you plan on carrying on.
Yeah, no, that's sort of my dad's independent bottling background kind of coming through. He always it's pretty hard to convince him that single cask and single cask strength whiskey isn't the best way to drink it, and so he's always intended on having a fairly extensive range of single casks available to people. They are more limited now than they have been in the past, but we certainly plan to make more available in BC over the coming years. Yeah.
If there's a wait list we can get on, our store's turning 20 next year, so that might be a perfect way to celebrate.
Yeah, well, we started working with Zoe Tung, and she's doing a great job. So she's your
first. Shout out to Zoe. Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah. No, she's whenever I see her, she's like got sort of a baby in one hand and Zoom call in the other. And
I'm not sure how Zoe does it.
She seems to be incredibly busy. So it's absolutely something we do, and particularly for stores like the Strat.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Zoe and see if we can put some wheels in motion for that. I can't promise anything, viewers, but if we can make it work, then that could be quite fun.
We've done some interesting stuff recently. We've done, like you mentioned, mezcal.
Yes, I tried the mezcal cask. That was really cool.
It works really well. Works really well. And tequila casks. We've also got like Sauterne and STR, which is like a re-toasted red wine cask. We do Armagnac, all sorts of different ones.
Armagnac cask. I'd be down for that. All right, we'll touch base. In the meanwhile, I can't actually remember if I told people the price for this one or not. I'm not sure I did, but it's okay if I didn't, because it's exactly the same price as the Loch Gorm. This is on the shelf right now for $159.04, and it is 10% off at $143.14. Beautiful, very nice indeed. I also really enjoy the fact that this has been bumped up to 50 ABV. I think that really helps it shine as well. Yeah,
we do like to sort of, we bottle at a minimum of 46. So, there's plenty of people who don't do that. And then we do, for the limited editions, kind of like to bump it up where we can, particularly for the sort of special editions. So Loch Gorm and 100% Isla, well, the 100% Islay is 50, but Loch Gorm's 46. But, you know, with the regular ones, we're not so, you know, focused on increasing the ABV, but for the likes of the Madeira, which we'll taste next, you know, and other ones, we feel like if you're buying, you know, spending that little bit more money, and you've got that particular sort of distinctly different cask influence, you want something that kind of helps it deliver on the palate.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really helps with that as well is if you're having something that is a more standard edition that you've had before, that is, you know, consistent and there and always good, and is a bit of a a bit of a stalwart like the Mackay Bay and the Snake, it's you're not necessarily going to be concentrating as much on every ounce. You're just going to sit and enjoy it. So you're unlikely to want to, you know, go through the whole ceremony of adding a couple of drops of water and thinking about it so much. You're probably going to sit and, you know, have a conversation or watch Netflix or whatever you do while you're drinking your whiskey. Whereas with these special editions, because, you know, they are a little bit more limited, you might never have the chance to get another bottle, and because they're generally a little bit more expensive as well. I think oftentimes people want to actually give it more direct attention. And if you have it at 50 ABV, it means that you can play around with it a little bit more. You can add a couple of drops of water if you want and not, you know, worry too much about accidentally adding too much. Although I always wonder about the whole adding too much water thing, because, you know, it's fine, just add more whiskey. You can always balance it back out again. But yeah, I mean, I really think that approach works very well for the consumer side of things.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, well, absolutely what you said. I completely agree. When you've got a higher ABV, it does just draw your attention in.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, as you said, Madeira Cask matured, the 2021 edition. This has been on our shelves for a little while. We've got some left still, and it's an absolute honor that I get to finally open it and drink it, because I've been staring at this for ages, thinking, do I, don't I? And as you can see, I've got quite a few bottles on the go. So I have a tendency these days not to buy sight unseen, simply because I have the opportunity to try so many whiskies. So this is my do I, don't I? So I'm looking forward to this, because I love Madeira Cask whiskies.
Okay, well, this is a full maturation, so it's not a finish. It's a limited edition that we have used Madeira casks in the past. I think it was in 2015 that we did it last. And my dad, he's a big fan of, well, he doesn't really like to finish whiskies. He'd much rather do a full maturation, even if it means, you know, bottling a bit younger. And these are fresh Madeira casks. And it's a maturation of just over 5 years, and bottled at cask strength. So it's fairly young, but actually, you know, if you have a nose and stuff, it's an interesting one, because it's very iodine-y. It's almost got a sort of ashy nose to it, and then just really fruity and rounded on the palate.
Nice. So 17,000 bottles.
Yeah. So we're a small distillery, but Isla is a big brand. So we've managed to sort of get ourselves into about 65 markets around the world.
Oh, impressive.
So 17,000 bottles doesn't really go very far, actually. By the time
no, and I think we only got a few cases here in BC. So
yeah,
lovely.
So yes, it's you know, this is back to the heavily peated spirit, and yeah, so you've got that smokiness coming through. As I say, it's almost sort of, this is going to be like not particularly, actually, maybe not in a nice way, but sort of almost like cigarette smoky on the nose. I was getting that, but
I would say more pipe tobacco, but cigarette.
Yeah, pipe tobacco, maybe, yeah.
a little bit more.
I usually associate Madeira with, you know, real sort of tobacco leaf, leather, you know, that kind of stuff. But maybe it was just, I also opened a new bottle, so maybe it's just the fact that it just needed to open up a little bit. But yeah, it's very nice. It's similar in style to the the sherry in that it goes in the fruity direction. You know, the Madeira takes the whiskey in that fruity direction, but it's much more. You don't have that cinnamony, spicy, oaky influence. You have that it's sort of cooked fruits, like pears, apples, you know, stewed apples, stewed pears, that kind of fruitiness with the sort of richness of the sherry, not the sherry, the richness of the tobacco, leathery kind of influence as well, almost honey sweetness.
And I'm getting a very specific memory right now, and a very Edinburgh specific memory. I wonder if it's something, I don't know if it still exists, but back when I lived in Edinburgh over a decade ago, there was a Chinese buffet restaurant right by the train station.
Okay. I remember that. An all-you-can-eat restaurant.
Yeah. Right there at Waverley. I don't know if it's still there anymore. That place was great. They had the most amazing mango pudding, like a mango custard at the desserts, which I've never been able to find anything anywhere near as good at any other restaurant. And this smells like that mango custard.
It's a mango custard chutney kind of thing. I haven't tasted this for a while. It's interesting.
So how many different Kilchomans are like made outside of like the specials, like single cask bottlings and things? How many editions do you generally do in a year? How many shelves do you have to install at home to be able to have them all?
Well, not that many, to be honest. We have the Maccabee and Tannic, which are always available. And then we have Gilcombe 100% Isla, which are once every year. And then we do 2 others.
Cool.
So the Madeira, it did come to BC last year, but actually it only went to like BC and the States, because we had a bottle shortage. So we kind of bottled them up, sent them over to you guys, knowing that it was going to take 6 weeks and then, or more probably. And then in that period, we got told by our glass supplier that we weren't going to get any deliveries for a while. So we stopped bottling limited editions. So it's only really in BC and the US, and then it's only just being launched in Europe today.
Interesting.
So if you haven't seen much talk about it or anything like that, then that'll be why.
It is the inverse of the usual then, because here in BC we're so used to being the last place to get anything. Which is often quite interesting, because it means we get quite a large amount of things that are like sold out worldwide. We recently got that ridiculous Macallan cocoa thing, and like for us it was just a standard release. I think we got like 12 cases of it or something, and we're looking in Europe, it's like, people are selling this for $800 a bottle. What the hell's going on?
Well, this time around you got it first. So
amazing. That never happens. All right, guys, get it first and then gloat to your European friends. So I don't know how many we have still on the shelf. I know we have definitely sold a few. I think we've got 3 cases. We've probably got about 1.5 or so left. Whatever that amount is, minus 1 from it, because I'm probably going to pinch one. The regular price is $176.43, and that means on sale with 10% off is $158.79. Beautiful.
Good, isn't it?
This is absolutely wonderful.
Because the Madeira, the sort of fortified wines like the Madeira, port, they work particularly well with Kilchoman. Kilchoman lends itself to any cask type, because it's got the real citrus sweetness, which can go with the sweetness of a cask, and then it's got the peat smoke, which can also kind of give it good grounding so that it doesn't get lost.
Absolutely.
By the influence of the cask coming through. So
that makes an awful lot of sense if you think about it from a cooking perspective, or if you're using like a barbecue or making sauces and things. Like citrus goes with anything, pretty much. Like you can always find some way to make pretty much any flavor work with citrus, and smoke are kind of the same as well. So we've tried everything. The most extreme probably being the mezcal and tequila, and I didn't think that would work at all. But we've just bought another, I think, 70 casks. Oh, wow.
We're going to do more full maturation. The mezcal is very interesting, because you've got something that's already smoky, but sort of salty smoke of Kilchoman and the vegetable smoke of the mezcal kind of seem to work. So, but yeah, you'll see. We'll try anything.
I don't know if the SWA has allowed this yet, but one thing that one flavor that I think would go really well with the smoke and the sort of lemon kind of flavors would be a pear cider cask.
Maybe. I think that.
I don't know if you're allowed.
Cider cask now, because they only just opened it up for
And well, Glenmoray did apple cider casks, but I have a weird feeling that they weren't allowed to call it whiskey.
Oh, right. Okay.
Maybe they were. I'm not sure, but.
What you have to learn with the SWA is you generally get a little slap on the wrist the first time around. And so long as you don't have more than one slap on the wrist in like 6 months, you'll be fine.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a very interesting and entertaining episode. I look forward to seeing the comments from our members. Thank you to everyone who's joining in for the live chat. Again, if you have any questions for us, please drop us a comment in the video as well. If you have a question for me, I can answer in the live chat. Unfortunately, if you have a question for James, the live chat will be happening in the middle of the night, and we're not going to wake him up just to join in on a text chat. So please leave a comment rather than on the video rather than a text chat, because that way we'll actually see it after the video is ended. So one final question for you, and this might be a simple no, go away, but is there any clues you can give us as to what might be coming up in 2022?
Yeah, we've got what have we got? We've got the new edition of Gilcombe coming up. We've got then a new edition of 100% Isla. For Europe, they're getting the Madeira. And then in the autumn, we're either going to release a full port maturation that I think is about 8 years old.
Cool.
Or we're going to release a special edition, which is, we took 3-year-old bourbon barrels, and my father bought 6,000 litre wooden vats that were red wine vats that had been recharged. And so he put the 3-year-old bourbon cask, because it wouldn't count as whiskey if it hadn't done the 3 years in the smaller barrels. So we did 3 years in the bourbon barrels, and then we put it in these toasted, recharred red wine vats, and that's coming good. So it just depends which one my father feels is going to be best in the autumn, but that'll be what happens. When
you do the red wine vats, are you going to empty the whole thing, or start a Solera?
I think we're going to empty the whole thing.
Okay.
I think probably,
because a Solera that would make a very interesting extra annual release, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the trouble is then, I mean, we'd need about 20 of them to do it as an annual release. A little bit of it. So maybe we just need to buy more, and then we can. I love the idea of having a Solera. But
I shouldn't say this because I want it to come to BC, but maybe you could do that and just keep it as a Distillery exclusive. Yeah. People come up and fill their own bottles from the Solera.
Distillery exclusive Solera. Oh, that's a good idea. If we do that, I'm not paying you any commission.
That's fair. But can I at least come and fill my own bottle?
Yeah, you can have one free bottle.
Excellent. But I've got to come to Scotland to get it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, I very much hope to see you at a festival at some point. This video is in part happening because our whiskey festival here in BC couldn't happen this year. So we will be having a festival in 2023 that, so long as nothing terrible happens. We're planning to have a festival in 2023, and we would very much love for you to come and join us if you're able. I'm sure that Kilchoman will be there regardless. And yeah, Slán Siva, thank you very much.
Slán Siva, thank you.